Good morning.
Good morning. The Sting song is so good.
Isn't that a nice song by Sting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspired.
So Oprah was interviewing Cheryl Strayed, who decided in 2012 to walk the Pacific Crest Trail that is 1,100 miles. I first started to say 1,000 miles, but every 100 counts, I think. When you're So Cheryl decided to walk this trail after her life had really just become unsustainable the way she was living. And there are a lot of stories she had about herself and her life that she felt she needed to let go of or transcend. The biggest story that she was grappling with was her mother died at 45 years old, just 4 years prior to that in 2008. She was really struggling to get her feet underneath her after her mother passed away. So she had never hiked before. She had never done anything like this before and just decided that this was something she needed to do to transcend her stories. We all have stories in our lives. Some of them we have fictionalized, and some of them are more accurate. And just like Sting's song, some of them are sad chapters. Some of them are angry chapters. Some of them are filled with love and the people we love. Some of them are things we wish we never had to deal with and hope never to see again. But they comprise the books of our lives. I first fell in love with storytelling a number of years ago when I started an anthology of letters for women, and I asked them to write a letter about something they had been through in their life and that they gained wisdom from. Something that was a watershed moment, something that changed them in a way that probably nothing else had. And I told them to choose what they wanted to write. I wasn't going to dictate what that was, because I think each of us has at least one story that we have to tell, that we have to say out loud, or that we have to write down in order for us to move through it, to transcend it, grab whatever wisdom we can, whatever silver lining there is, in order to move forward in our lives. Because we get stuck sometimes in our stories. We get stuck in the retelling of them. We get stuck in the feeling of them, the thinking of them, and sometimes, like I said, the fiction about them. Like in Cheryl's interview with Oprah, there were things she needed to let go of. She had stories about herself because of her drug use and her promiscuity. There were stories she had about herself because of her relationship with her family and family members and how she was raised. And she got to a point where none of it was serving her. And she decided she needed to let go of it in 1,100 miles walk. It was, her stories portrayed in the movie Wild. And the book, I read the book. The book is wonderful because in the 1,100 miles, she's by herself. She walked this by herself, except for times when she met up with people on this path. I can't fathom wanting to be out in the wilderness for 3 months or more by myself, sleeping in a tent, no less. But that's what she felt she needed to do in order to transcend her stories. So we have stories that we need to just let go of, just drop them where they are. The fiction that we have about ourselves that just aren't true. The stories about being worthless or damaged or broken or unlovable or unloved, destined for nothing great, undeserving, that there's nothing but pain coming our way. And perhaps that's all that should come our way. And those are the things at some point when we get tired of telling the story because we've said them over and over again, whether out loud or in our heads, that we just need to stop telling. We all have them. I've been there a number of times where I said something out loud again to somebody else about some period of my life, and I said, I'm not telling that story again. Tired of telling it. Tired of reliving it. Tired of it defining who I am right now, when perhaps that story happened decades ago, years ago, months ago, weeks ago, or days ago. So I gathered these stories, and women told stories that had to do with death in their lives. One woman witnessed both her husband and her father both died in front of her. And it just happened like that. Within about 3 years apart, as I remember. And she had never processed her grief. Never. Because she had a daughter, and she felt like she had to just keep moving for her daughter. So she dragged her grief, all of it, kept it encapsulated inside of her, and just moved it forward, day by day by day. And when we do that with our baggage, with our stories, they only get heavier and heavier and heavier. Another woman told a story about her mother who apparently had some mental illness, but at some point put a gun to her head and said she was going to kill her. And she managed to get away from her, but she was traumatized by that. Who wouldn't be? That the one who gave you life would want to take that life from you. Not because of anything you've done. I told the story about my father's passing. Another woman told the story about her father's passing. Another woman told the story of a very painful divorce. And myself and each of these women found our golden nugget from those stories, and it was in the process of writing the stories that we were able to find that wisdom and move beyond it, and come out stronger, and come out more powerful, and leave behind whatever wasn't serving us. So there are stories you just let go of, just drop, just stop saying, just stop telling. And there are stories that we need to have and to hold, but to hold them in a different way. To hold them within our power. To be able to tell them and honor all that you feel about them, and then let them serve you as you move forward in life. We've been talking about wisdom the last couple of weeks. And it is our wisdom that will tell us which stories go in which category. What do you drop and what do you keep? And we all know, but just like we talked about heeding wisdom and listening to that advice, that still small voice that's guiding us, and sometimes not listening to it, not heeding, we need to heed the advice about our stories. And decide what we're going to do with them. There are stories that we need to say to other people, that we need to share with people we love. Or perhaps share them in a group who are there to hear your story. Some stories are only for a select few who will treasure it and hold it for you and hold the space for you as you give them the treasures from your life. Not everyone deserves to hear your story, because not everybody will hold it the way it deserves to be held. So use your wisdom to decide who those people are. Who are the ones who are strong enough to hear your story and not stop you in the telling because you're feeling vulnerable and emotional? Not everybody can hold that space for you. And the ones who can are generally the ones who can tell their own stories with power and grace. We get to choose what the book of our life reads like. Like the song said, we don't know how it's going to end. Nobody can tell us what the other chapters are filled with. We don't know what the chapters are filled with. We don't know what the last chapter is. Yes, our days are numbered. How do we want that story to read for us? And as a legacy we leave in this world for the people we love or the people we meet. How do you want your story to read? Can you say that you're in a place where you're grateful for all your stories because they've led you to right here, right now? Or are you still regretting some things? Are you still refusing to look at some chapters? Are you still wanting to rip out some of the pages and burn them somewhere because you're still angry? Because you're still so hurt? Because you're still blaming somebody else?
And blame yourself for.
Yeah, or you're still blaming yourself for it. How many more years will we kick ourselves? How many more years? Wisdom serves us in every way, like we talked about. In every way. And actually, wisdom carried us through our stories. I was in one of my meditation times one morning and doing one of my moving meditations. And I repeat this exercise 103 times. And always, for some reason, at number 85, I would get this sensation from head to toe. And I would get some message, I believe, from Spirit about my stories about myself. That happened for about a month or so. Every time I did that exercise, that same message came up. And it just repeated itself until I felt healed. And the message was, I've been with you through everything. Gosh, I feel it again now. I've been with you through everything, because there were days where I felt like there wasn't anyone. I was so bereft and alone. And I thought, I'm just slogging through this thing by myself. You know, when you're just white-knuckling it through your days and your nights, wondering, how the heck am I going to do this? Where am I going to end up? How long is this going to last? Maybe there's something about the number 85. Maybe I need to look that up. I don't know. Always at number 85. And I would just weep and continue through the next 18 repetitions. Just weeping with gratitude, knowing that in my darkest chapters of my life, Spirit was with me. And that's how I survived it. That's how I got to the next chapter. That's how I got through the darkness of that night. That's how I was able to turn the page just when you think that page isn't going to turn. It feels like it's stuck to the page after. Just when you're lifted by the corners, I just want to get past this. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen. That's when divine wisdom has us, and we have only, like I always say, to open our eyes, to know we are always carried. We are always carried. And I think that's the crux of the power of understanding that, yes, God stands under all things. Stands under all things. Stands under us. That's our underpinning at all times, through all stories, all chapters. And so in that realization that I was carried always, I was able to let go of the hurt and the pain and the shame and the regret and the blame. And say, yes, it is all good. So I can start a chapter that says, it is all good. And perhaps that'll be the title of each chapter. If I choose that, if I choose that that's the story I want to have for my life, despite what's going on, because there are always going to be rough chapters. There's always going to be something to make you feel like you need to walk 1,100 miles to get it out of your system. But relying on divine wisdom, relying on that power to know and to live like you know. Write the last chapter, the next chapters like you know what is, what truly is. That it is all good. That it is all right. Not just all right like okay, but all right. It is right and good and true. So think of the stories you're telling yourself over and over again. Are they stories you want to let go of? You can seal off that chapter and turn the page. Just turn the page. Perhaps you want to start a new book. Go to volume 2. It's up to you what you want to do with it. Because sometimes we just need to close it. Give it a back cover, file it somewhere, and just let it go. And be thankful that you can start another volume, you can start another chapter, and move forward knowing that Spirit is always there for whatever. For whatever. Our stories, we're either going to let go or we're going to go forth. Carry the stories differently. Let go of the ones you don't want. Just say you're going to let them go. I'm done right here with this chapter. And never look back. Never look back. Not feeling like you need to dredge it up. Not feeling like you need to share it. When others are telling their stories and they're starting to bemoan parts of their lives, you don't feel like you have to say, oh, I've got something I can bemoan too. And just be okay with being good. And knowing you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to tell it anymore. Move beyond that. I remember the first time I was in a workshop and they asked us to write down things that we either regretted or had shame about, or things we didn't want to think about again, but we still bring them up. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't have a long list anymore. This is nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had one or two things that I was still processing, but there was nothing that I thought, man, I'm hating that part of my life. Nothing. It felt good.
Yes, thank you.
It was freeing. It was very freeing. So if your word for this year is release, perhaps there are some stories you need to look at. Sounds like Odin has been.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. What are the stories you need to let go of? Even if your word's not release, probably have a story you need to let go of. Whether it's just time to stop it right here, right now, or take the best of it, spend some time in it, feel it completely, stop running from it, let it process, and then take the gold from it and walk forward, feeling powerful and strong in that story. And sharing the wisdom from it with the people you love, with the people who need it. If there's a story rising up within you that you think you need to tell because there's wisdom in it, there's always somebody, I believe, who needs to hear it. Someone you can bless it with. There's always somebody who needs to hear something, but from the blessing side. And that's when you get to be divine wisdom in action. Divine wisdom in expression. Become the hands and feet of God for someone else. For someone else. Let's take this in a meditation. Just take a deep breath. If you can, get an image of what that book of your life might look like. Hold it in your hands. Maybe shift through the pages of that book of your life. Are there pages or chapters you get stuck on? Are there chapters you want to flip through quickly? Because you can't bear to see them again or read those words again. Just let yourself feel them, knowing there's nothing to fear. That Spirit was with you through all of it, blessing you, holding you, guiding you, supporting you. Chapters you don't like to look at. Perhaps turn each page slowly. Blessing them. Breathing through them. Just breathe with it. Choosing not to let it have power over you anymore. Keep holding that book. And if you can, find some gratitude for it. Knowing there are pages for you to write and create a life of your dreams, whatever that is. Dreams of love, peace, abundance, spiritual groundedness, vibrant health, rest and relaxation for body, mind, and soul, deep, fulfilling relationships, family of choosing, love overflowing. Continue to hold the book. And picture yourself turning to an empty page. With pen in hand. With a million different choices of how it can be lived. How each dream can be manifested. Whether you have 1 day, 100 days, 100 weeks, or 100 years more. And bless what is to come. Feeling gratitude for what is to come. As you continue to hold the stories of your life, let's take a deep breath in. Exhale, holding the space for each other. Knowing that we have a story together as a spiritual community. With chapters and volumes of our own. Breathe in again. Exhale. Breathing in gratitude. Breathing in love, breathing in peace, breathing in peace, and breathing in wisdom, breathing in wisdom.